All right. Welcome to Pro School. Today we are going over setting up quote templates inside of ProLine. ProLine's quotes are extremely customizable. So what you're seeing here, this is an example of a quote that was generated inside of our demo account. We're going to essentially rebuild the template that was used to generate this quote. But all of this is highly customizable. So we're going to be going over that today, how to customize those quote templates and make them your own. So let's go into the company settings. I'm going to go over to quotes, quote templates. We have this Atlas roof replacement template. This is what was used to create that quote we just looked at. And so that's what this looks like. And it's all built out, has a lot of content in here, all ready to be used to generate quotes with. We're going to essentially rebuild this from scratch. So we'll call this Atlas Roof Replacement 2. And we will create that here. Now, before we jump into actually creating the quote template and building that out, I want to come down here real quick to our price list. So before you start building out your quote templates, you're going to want to go through your price list and make sure that you have all your different materials that you use here in the list, as well as the necessary labor line items. If you just do a simple labor pricing, then you might just need a single line item for it. If you have a more complex labor structure, then you might need more than one of these line items here. Now, in your price list, there's a few options here on the side. You're going to be able to tell ProLine whether it's material or labor, set the price, and then also the value per item, whatever you call that quantification, whether it be piece or square. Then over here, you have a few buttons. You can set a default description for a line item. This can be overwritten at any point down the line, whether it be, when you generate quotes, you can go in and change what the description is, but you can set the default here. And then also we have the ability to put in calculations for quantities when this price item is used on a quote. This also can be overwritten by the calculations at the quote template level, but I wanted to point out that you can put them here, and managing them here on your price list can be easier if you're using the same price list item in multiple places inside of your different templates. So then coming up here to the quote templates, before we dive all the way into that, I want to come up here to the top and look at this drop down. So right now, this says company defaults because we are looking at the defaults for the entire company in ProLine. But if you are using ProLine's multi-location functionality, you can select any of your locations and then also turn on the ability to use unique quote templates and pricing for each location. Now, if your locations are relatively close together, maybe you don't need different pricing or different quote templates. But if you have two different locations in two completely different markets with different pricing, then you might need to keep those separate, in which case you can enable that and you can have a unique price list and a unique set of quote templates for each of your locations. We're going to stick here in the company defaults right now. So let's go into this Atlas roof replacement template here. We just created that. And what we're looking at here is a blank template. There are no pages in this template, which means that if we were to use this template to generate a quote inside of ProLine, then this is actually just going to generate a white page. There's no content in it. The first thing we're going to add right off the bat is if we want to add, say, a cover page and use ProLine's default cover page, then we can add that page here. This is going to allow us to add a default image. So we're going to add a default image, cover image. This can be overwritten when you actually create the quote, so you can pull in the actual homeowner's home, but you can add a default here in case you don't have a picture of their home. You want to have another picture here. Often this would be like a picture of your team. It can be just a generic home if you want it to be, but often we see pictures of people's teams put in here as the default cover image. Logo height, not super important, but if you notice on your quotes that your logo looks a little weird, maybe because it's a really long or tall logo and you want to customize how ProLine is displaying that height wise, you do have that ability here. So now we have this cover page. We're going to just keep adding pages and customizing out pages. Let's go. Let's start adding. Let's go back and look at what's in this other template. We have an introduction, and then we have this custom reputation page. So let's add all of this in. Let's add a text page, and we're going to make this our introduction page. So now we have a text page, and I can reference the contact's name and any other variables that, just like in ProLine's campaigns that you can pull in, you can pull those in here, and then you can do user. So this is just a very rough kind of example of a little intro here. We're pulling in, this is going to be the assigned sales rep's name in this context, and then it's going to be the customer's, the contact's first name that's associated with the project. So now we have an introduction page, and you're going to come down here to custom next, and we're going to make that reputation page that we had. For our custom pages, you can upload any custom designs, whether it be a JPEG image, a PNG image, or a PDF. There is a limit of 2 megabytes. So you got to make sure that you're sizing that correctly before it gets pulled into ProLine. PDFs are a little bit different. That limit doesn't necessarily apply to PDF because we're going to convert it into images first. And so often those end up being smaller. But you can still run into issues. So you'll get an error. ProLine will tell you if the file is too large when you upload it. So we're actually going to have this design that I already built outside of ProLine. I'm just going to pull that back in. It's the same thing I had in that other template. And so now this is that custom page. And this is a design that was pulled in from I built this in Photoshop the other day. So now we have this custom page here. Another good use case for these custom pages is if you like to add maybe your Eagle View report, or if you want to add some literature about like a PDF document with some literature about the specific shingle or some other item that's a part of your quote, you can upload those documents in using these custom pages. So that's a good use case for these as well, even if it's more than one page. So if it's a PDF doc with more than one page, this will it'll have down here at the bottom, it'll say the number of pages, and you can have any number of pages in this custom page element. Now moving on, let's go to the actual options. So we have that good Atlas Pinnacle Pristine. And the way that I recommend building this out, if you do want to have like a good, better, best style quote, is build out your good option first completely. Then we're going to go back and actually duplicate these options. Duplicate these options down and you reuse them. That way you're not having to rebuild each one from scratch. And so we can start adding line items here. We're going to go Atlas, Pinnacle Pristine with Scotchgard. Add that. So now we have our shingle, and we will start adding some other items here. I'm not going to add all the items, but we'll pull in a few. Okay, so we have these. If we click on these icons here, we have the edit line item calculations. You'll see here that it says use default calculation formula. So those formulas that I was showing you before on the price list, this is currently set to use that formula that's on the price list. But if I want to, I can deselect this, and then now I can build out a custom formula that is specific to this specific line item on this template. But in most cases, you're probably going to just want to use that default that you're managing on your price list level. That just makes things a lot easier, because once we duplicate this out into a better and best option, then what you're going to have is actually each one of these line items is going to be duplicated twice. So they're going to be separate line items. So if you start building out custom calculations here, then you're going to have manage those line items separately. So that's the reason why you would deselect it, is if you want to manage them separately. But if you want them to all just be synced back to what's on your price list as far as the calculations go, then you would just leave that selected. I'm going to go ahead. There's a couple other options here to go over. One of them is
AJ.
yeah.
Hey, sorry to interrupt. On that, so that feature, what are you seeing that people are using that feature for? Because I've noticed on other ones that you've kind of shy away. People shy away or don't really like encourage people to use that feature. But what is it exactly for?
For the calculations.
Yeah, yeah. Like
The
when would
count.
someone use that? Like the one that you just went in and edited.
You mean for like deselecting it and
Yeah, like
having it
what's like
unique?
what's like an example like you see people doing that on?
So we just recently added this feature right here. So this is I don't know. The answer is I think most people are going to leave that selected. It's just going to be like if you have some sort of really weird quote where you just want it to be you want to tweak that formula specifically to that option. It's the option. The ability is there. So we used to have it. Was always at the template level. And so we just added the ability to manage it at the price list level to simplify things. And so, but we didn't want to take away that ability to manage it at the template level. So that's the reason this has been preserved like that.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So I don't know. Well, time will tell to see how many people stick to managing it at the template level and how many users just want to manage it on their price list. I think most people are going to want to manage it at the price list level for most items.
That makes okay.
Thanks for the question. So the down here on the side, we have the ability to change this option over to an upgrade. So, and we'll get into upgrades and options here in a second. We can duplicate this option, which I'm going to do here in a second so that we can have a better best options. I can also hide this so that the page doesn't show up on the quote, but it still shows as an option on the pricing page or on the signature page. So the person can still sign for this option, but it doesn't actually show it as content on the quote as an actual page. I can do the same thing with line items. So if I have my main line item here that I have visible, and then if I want to, I don't want, for example, OSB board to actually show up as a line item on my quote, I can actually hide it from the quote. It's still going to factor into the total cost, but it won't be actually shown to the homeowner. And that's like things like caulks and sealants, some of these things, it's like you might not want to actually have it on your quote because it's just going to raise unnecessary questions. The focus of the homeowner is going to be primarily on like the shingle, like the really high level big line items. And so if you want to focus in on those, you can hide those other line items from the quote so that only the only certain line items are shown when the quote is generated. We can also upload a image to go with this option. So I'm going to pull this in here. And this is just you can pull in any image, but in this case, I have these images from Atlas's website. We're pulling in to go with this Atlas Pinnacle Pristine option. And so I've basically set those up to be nice headers of this option, but you can really pick any shape image to go here. I can also add a description for this option. So if I want to talk about, Pinnacle Pristine is a great option, I can add a description, and we'll show you what this looks like here in a second when we generate the quote. So now that I have this one option built out, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate it a couple times. So now we have this one. We'll call this one better. We'll call this one best. Okay. I can actually rearrange these really easily too, if I wanted to. So if I accidentally had good down here, I can easily just drag it up and reorder it. Same thing with the line items as well, if I want to change the order, and that will determine what order they are displayed on the actual quote when you generate the quote. Now, So we have this, but now we still have this Atlas Pinnacle Pristine shingle on all three options. We made it really easy to go in and just pick. So if I want this, we'll call this, we'll do, so we're doing sun and impact. So we'll make this one sun. Sun, Pinnacle impact. We'll change out these images here. And then I'm going to change out these line items. So I'm going to go for sun. And boom. Now that just switches out without having to delete and re-add a line item. We just switch it out real fast to a different price, and tie it back to a different price item on the price list. So I can do impact and boom. So now I have my three options. Then from here, I'm going to want to add some upgrades. So I'm going to actually duplicate this one more time. And then I could just build an upgrade from scratch if I wanted to, but I can also use this little button to change this option into an upgrade. This is kind of normally you can't change page types, so you just remove them and add a different page type, but we have this ability, you have this ability to switch back and forth between upgrades and options since they're so similar. So I'm going to remove this cover image now. We'll make this a seamless gutters. And so this will be an upgrade that will be available on the quote. We're going to delete these line items. Gutter replacement. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so that's now good to go. Seamless gutters. You could also do, wanted to add it this way, could do lifetime pipe boots. Pipe boot. Okay. And so we have lifetime pipe boots. So now these are options. And then let me look back at this other template, what we have here. So we have the gutters, we have, okay, signature page and terms and conditions. So the signature page, you don't have to add a signature page. If you don't add a signature page to the quote template and then eventually to the quote that you generate with it, then this becomes more like just a document. You're just generating a PDF document that you can share, a shareable PDF document. You can still approve it manually, but if you want the digital signature functionality that ProLine offers, then you have to add a signature page in order to get that. Now, the signature page can't be customized. It's generated automatically based on the upgrades and options that are in your quote. And then lastly, we have terms and conditions. You can cover, call this stuff whatever you want. But we'll call it terms and conditions here. And we're using that same text page from the introduction. It's the same type of page. We're just putting different content into it. But one really cool thing here, so we'll actually just copy this over from terms and conditions. So we have this initial placeholder here, or tag, that can be placed anywhere you want. You can place as many of them as you want into your text. And this is perfect for inserting and requiring initials on certain aspects of your contract if that's necessary, to make sure that the homeowner or whoever's signing this quote is fully agreeing to everything in your contracts. Some states require that extra kind of level of agreement. And so, I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. That initial. So we have pretty much the entire template built out now. Let's go down and look at the settings real quick before we actually generate anything with this. So we have the template name. So this is what we're going to call, this is what we're going to use to keep track of this template inside of ProLine, but this isn't customer facing. The quote name, this is the name that's going to get used by default for quotes generated with this template. And so this is what's going to be actually customer facing. So we're going to call that roof replacement. Design theme. You can pick just a brand, your brand colors, and you can change that to whatever you want it to be. You have the option to display financing on your quotes as well by default, or show financing on quotes that are generated with this quote template. If you select this, then you'll need to put in a rate and the terms that your financing offer typically entails. I know that it's going to change from person to person, but you can, this is a sort of a promotion thing that gets pushed into ProLine. And so you just put in kind of that, whatever that promotion rate is and terms, pending their actual approval. And then you can also add a link directly to your financing provider so that people can click from the quote immediately to the application. So we'll actually put in, say, 8%, 48 months. That, and then we'll do just so we can demonstrate that. You can pick at the quote template level the default profit margin for quotes created with this template. That can be customized as you're generating the quotes, so at the quote level. You can also specify if you want there to be a required deposit. And so if you want to collect a 15% deposit, you can set that at the quote template level so that all quotes created with this template are going to actually tell the person signing there is this much due as a deposit. You can also add discounts. So if you, depending on how you want to set up, we're about to launch payments and invoicing in ProLine. And so this will interact in some way, but you can, if you wanted to add like a cash discount, so you can add this to your quote by default, have a cash discount. Should be 3.2 there. I'm going to take a look at that, but you can add that or any other discounts that you want to add by default at the template level. And then line item price and quantity visibility. You have some options here on how you want line items to be displayed. Do you want to show line items that don't have quantities? Do you want to show the prices of line items? Do you want to show the quantities of line items? So you have some control over how those are displayed on those option and upgrade pages. Lastly, you have, yeah.
Oops, sorry again. I was wondering, do those cash discounts, can you get them in decimals? Because I know that it was at 345. I don't know if you could do like a 3.3 or anything like that.
Yes. So you can, I think it is. I think that the issue here is it's just displaying it incorrectly. I need to go in and make sure it's displaying it correctly. We'll check it at the quote level. I think I might have already fixed it if I remember at the quote level. But you can see here when I'm adding this cash discount, I am able to specify a decimal amount. So I can do 3.2, 3.3. If for some reason it's just not showing it here. So I'm just going to have to check on that tonight.
Okay.
But it is actually a decimal. I think it's just getting rounded in this view right here, incorrectly rounded. All right. So we have send quote actions. This is where you have control over the default text message and email that are used when sending the invoice, or not sending the invoice, sending the quote. And you have to use these quote link. This is actually required for all of these fields. You have to include the quote link inside of your template for these messages. You can also specify what stage you want projects to move to when a quote gets sent to them. And so you can specify that here. We won't, because I don't want the demo projects moving around, but we can specify that here. Same thing with signed quote action. So I can determine the template that's used for signed quotes as well as the stage that projects are going to automatically get moved to. And so that's it for the template. And now let's actually generate a quote with this, and then we'll see how that looks. So we'll go to quotes. Now we have that Atlas roof replacement here that's available. In this project, I already have measurements that have been added. So I have measurement values in here. ProLine is going to use these measurement values with those line item calculations to calculate out the quantities that go on this quote. So when I hit create, That is assuming that these actually do have calculations on them. I don't know if those have calculations on them. So Atlas Pinnacle. Should. And also test here. We just added this feature, so there might be an issue with it. We can put in C1 here. Okay, so yeah, there is something going on with that feature, so that's something else we have to look into. We just added that actually today, so there's some kind of an issue going on with it, but it's supposed to generate this based on those calculations that are at the price list level. But when I deselect that, it is now correctly generating it. So it is generating out based on those measurement values the quantities for these line items. So anyone watches this video in the future, it will be fixed by the time you watch this video. And then we have the ability here at the quote level to now tweak this. So if I wanted to change this to a different quantity, I can. Here I can click and I can see a breakdown: cost, profit, subtotal, discounts, total. So I can see that breakdown for that option. Then down here at the bottom, I have that ability at the quote level to change the profit margin, to change the deposit, to add or remove discounts, and then also control price and quantity visibility down here. The last thing I want to go over is a little bit more on those calculations. So we have these calculations here. These are the measurement values. Down here, you're seeing you have three. Every ProLine account has three base calculations that happen before. They happen automatically for every project before any formulas that you put on line items, and those can be controlled. So for this demo account, we have, and this is what we put into every new ProLine account. We have total square, hip and ridge square, and starter square. Those are being automatically calculated. Then if we go down into the projects area of company settings, we can actually control those. If we wanted to change it to something else, we can, and then we can control how those are being calculated automatically. Now, because these are sort of sub calculations going on before the line items get calculated, when we're working with the line item calculations, so if we go to pristine, working with the line item calculations, we can actually reference those call them measurement calculations. So we can reference them. So if I want to reference that total square, C1 is the total square of the roof. So if I wanted to do the hip and ridge square, it'd be C2, or I can't remember the third one, but you can choose which one you want to use, and that's makes it a little bit easier to build out these line item calculations, because you're not having to copy paste big long formulas for every single one. You can pretty easily pull in one of those major calculations, and then if you need to modify it in some way, you can then proceed from there. And then you would build out these formulas using these different operators right here. So it's very important to be careful when you're building these out, not to pull in incorrect information or have open parentheses or anything like that. So if I wanted to, here's just kind of an example of something that could be done. I'm not saying this is a good calculation, but we do this. And ProLine's telling me right now we have an uneven number of parentheses. So parentheses has been left open. So we got to fix that. And so now it's been fixed. So ProLine's going to tell you if something's wrong with that calculation. And so as long as you just listen to these prompts, then you should be able to build out the calculation that you're looking for. And this is highly customizable. You can build these out however you want them, using parentheses to determine order of operations. You also have the ability to set a minimum quantity. So regardless of what this formula is, you can also set and say, there should always be at least one of these items on the quote. And so you have, between those two, you have a lot of control over how ProLine is automatically generating those quotes for you. All right. So I think that covers everything. Is there any further questions, Zach? Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, so the only question I had, so I know when you were talking about building the quote, you said something about leaving the signature off. So for example, you're giving the homeowner the quote and you don't want this like all the language with the signature. So you send that off, and let's say they do decide they want to go with you. Do you generally move the quote back or the client back to the quote or sent quote? You know what I mean? Like, because let's say you do want to, like, they do agree, like, yeah, we're choosing you, and then you want to send them with a signature version of this. Do you just move them back and then do it again, or what's the best process for that?
The what I would recommend is just always send it with the signature. If it is something that you're going to want a signature on, just go ahead and send it from the beginning with the signature page, so that the option is always there. So sign. If you do want to split it up and you want to be able to send this without the signature first, you can do that. The best way to do that is to have it still on your quote template, deselect it when you're generating your quote. Then you can generate the quote without it. If I'm understanding you correctly, you're talking about you want to be able to send something without a signature requested and then request a signature later.
Correct. Yeah, yeah. So like you said, so that's exactly what I was doing. So like I unclick it, so I'm
Yep.
sending it. Then they do accept the job, but what I've been having to do is move back to create a quote, click it again, and then send it again. Does that make sense? I was wondering if there
Yeah.
was another.
So the way I would do this is, so we'll send this, send messages. So the quote has been sent. And they say, hey, I want to move forward. Great. I can go in here. I'm going to have to reset the quote, and I have the option to update pricing and stuff if I want to. But if I don't want anything to change, then I don't select any of those. Reset the quote. Now I can edit it again. Well, when it's back in the draft state, they won't be able to access it. I then reselect the signature page and then generate the quote again. And so it's going to generate the PDF document here in a few seconds, and then now it's going to have that signature ability. So now it has the sign now, and it has the signature page. Does that answer your question?
So if you moved them down the pipeline, so obviously you created the quote, you sent it initially. Would you have to move them back to send that? Is kind of what I'm saying.
No,
You.
what stage they're in here has no bearing on what you can do here. This is
Okay. So you don't. Okay, that makes sense.
You can have, they can be anywhere in your pipeline here, and then you can do anything you want with the quotes. The only time that this is going to influence this is when you send a quote, it's going to, if you have that set to move to a stage on sent, then it's going to move it over to quote sent. Or if it gets signed and you have it set in the quote template here. So if you have a stage set here or here, which you're usually going to have, then that will move the project. But what stage it is in the pipeline is not going to keep you from doing anything here. It's just that the quotes are going to move stuff around sometimes.
Oh, so you could technically send someone a quote out of the new leads category.
Yeah. You can send
okay.
a quote anytime. Yeah.
For some reason, I thought they had to be in the creating quote to send the quote, but that's actually makes more sense. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, so it's disconnected. Just out of curiosity though, what would be, can you walk me through, because I haven't heard of that being done before, where like sending it without a signature and then getting a verbal approval and then sending it with the signature. What is the kind of the idea there with that?
So the idea is, so I'm noticing like other companies are sending like one page like estimates, which is fine, and they don't have any of their like language on it. But here in Florida, like we have all the lien laws, and my lawyer just drafted up a pretty long just document of a lot of just it's almost intimidating because all the lien and all that stuff. So
Gotcha.
my quotes are coming out to be like 15 plus pages long,
Oh,
and
I see.
trying to condense it. And then I'm like, if they do want to go forward, then send it again, where it's not like a 20-page PDF. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. What, yeah, the way I would definitely do that is the way I just showed you. And then you can actually do this at the quote template level. So you can, in the quote template, you can have these deselected. That way, when you generate a quote using that template, they'll be deselected by default. So you won't even have to deselect them. And so you can then send it. And then when they're ready to sign, you would reset it, go in here and re-enable, and then send it. Alternatively, you could. I have seen this before. I think it's a little bit weird and kind of hard to make work, but you can have your price with even the signature page. You can just specify that they're signing to agree with the, or not even, or just not even have a signature page on your main quote. Then you have a separate quote template for your contract that has all that. And then maybe there's like one line item on there for, you just plug in the total or something based on what they wanted from here. You could go that route. So you could build out a different custom quote template for your contract to actually move forward that is much simpler, but then has all your legal stuff. That is definitely a way that you could approach it as well. And then you'd have and that would allow you to have a little bit more control too if you wanted to add additional stages into your pipeline for like quote approved and then contract signed. You could separate those out. And then in the newer version, there will be a button here that says approve. And you'll be able to actually approve the quote from inside of ProLine. The homeowner doesn't have this option. So from inside ProLine, you'll be able to actually approve, and that can actually trigger automations. It could trigger moving it over to approved quote. And then you have that separate quote template for contract that then moves it to contract signed when they sign. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that definitely does. Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of options. I mean, this is so customizable. So like, you can have as many quote templates as you want, can have as many, build that out however you think is best. If you want it to be completely separate, or if you just want to do sort of the toggles like this, you can do that.
Okay, cool. Thanks for that.
Yeah, absolutely.